You wake up frantically as you try to find the light switch. You have to get out of bed and turn on the lights, as you've had another nightmare. It's the fourth time this week. You've been going to your doctor. You've been trying to find out what the problem was, but you can't get the images of explosions, torture, and death out of your mind. It hasn't been easy for your family since you left. Now living in England, you do have a nice job, stable income, better living, but you can't forget the images that you saw. You and your family have come from India, as you once were a high-ranking official within the Indian Army. Allied with the British Army, you had seen a multitude of death, destruction, and hatred on the battlefield.
Chester area. I would kindly ask customers to remain on the main concourse and await any announcements or updates to their service. Thank you for your cooperation.
You and your family left a couple months after the war. You could not go back to your hometown as you saw what it went through with the war and how you needed a regain of new life in diversity with success. You will see how the culture has changed with new opportunities with transportation, housing, and jobs with your new city of London.
So I've now got £10.
London City.
In this, we see the magnitude of changes in migration and immigration to Europe throughout the period following World War II. With the changes of housing, we immediately see more passenger travel surge to new different levels. More reorganized and regulatory agencies manage the industry of transportation, such as airlines, trains, and now cars. Now, with the ability of easier traveling with these methods, immigrants were able to easily go to different areas, part of the world, including Europe. A U.S. House of Representatives said a national emergency now exists because of the critical housing shortage. It was a similar story within Europe, as the housing crisis had gotten even bigger within the Great Depression, through the war, and now after the war. National recovery plans were produced and implemented with areas like London and most of Britain. Within this came urban planning and the share of employment and housing to localities that built up the population. But areas that were devastated by the war, like Greater London, had contracted from 8 million to 6 million from in the span of 1951 to 1991. Many men had served within World War II for the demands of war, and women had stayed at home to manufacture materials. With the war ending, women had made a whole lot of progress to the manufacture and industrial factories and businesses. With the war ending, women were expected to give up their jobs to the returning men. In the late 1940s, the government launched campaigns to encourage women to either stay in the household or in the markets. They also had encouraged migratory workers from former British colonies to fill in within the labor shortages. The cultural category that had changed society after World War II was those individuals who were refugees. A refugee is a person that was forced out of the country, in this case specifically for World War II. Here is a video from the BBC Historical Archives that better explains how refugees came to Europe and what they did.
The exile, the displaced person, the refugee. In the Middle East, half the refugees are children, born exiles. A permanent home for them is still remote. In Hong Kong, there are more than 1 million Chinese refugees. Many of them are destitute. Many have chronic TB. What can we do? Today is the start of World Refugee Year, an attempt to solve this problem. A problem which could be the story of this boy, aged 15, 14 years in a camp.
With the increase of influx of refugees impacts the gross domestic product of countries. With a certain study from ICMC shows that the impact of refugees in Europe between 1985 and 2015 shows that with just in 2 years, this showed an increase of inflow of the refugees, has created the economy within 15 countries to become healthier and unemployment decreasing. This new trend of mass refugees within countries explains how the housing, transportation, and jobs of different areas were influenced after World War II. This next video is a modernization of what it would be like to be a refugee in a wartime era. Images could be disturbing, but this is what it would be like to be within a country that is in conflict.
Happy birthday to you.
Make a wish.
Granny.
Hello.
Have you done your homework?
Ada.
For a general strike.
Ready or not? Here it comes.
Violent clashes with
Live ammunition against.
Deserve to get shot.
Have a nice day at school.
airstrikes on rebel positions.
We are going to stay.
What's happening?
Go.
Heavy fighting in Richmond.
Dad, where are we?
Rebel forces advance.
Daddy!
Happy birthday to you. Make a wish, darling.
Being a refugee or someone that would have to leave their country within wartime would not be easy. It might be one of the hardest things for people to do. Now in this modern era, we still see refugees from countries and still within conflict. As many countries still try to take in as many people as they can. All we could do is support them and try to minimize conflict between each other, to try to have a peaceful and successful life.